We're here today with the new Nissan Leaf, and you've probably seen that we've had a detailed static video of this car already on the YouTube channel, but today we actually get to drive it. Now, I'll give you a very quick look around it. Neil did already tell you what it's all about. As you can see, it's more of a crossover this time. Despite that, it's actually not much bigger on the outside, which may be a surprise. Inside, somehow, Nissan has carved out a bit of extra space, but the car itself isn't much bigger despite it being a crossover. This is the kind of car that people want these days, of course, more crossovers, more SUVs. Still very much a Nissan. It looks a bit like the Ariya in some ways, definitely designed by the same team perhaps. One little detail I really like is a play on words. So Nissan, it means 23 or 23 in Japanese, and there's this little Easter egg here, and you'll find that throughout the car, and I kind of like that. It kind of shows the design philosophy of this car. This car was designed, not just made. I think where you see that most is this sloping roofline, and that has been shaped by the wind tunnel. There's no doubt about that. This is a very slippery shape, and that is for range, of course, but it also looks pretty good, I think. My favorite view is that from the back. You can again see this Nissan motif in the rear lights, and really distinctive light bar joined by the Nissan word mark here. It's all about aerodynamics, but I think it looks good, and actually that would be quite crucial to the sales of this car. The original Nissan Leaf was quite an innovator, no doubt about that, but it wasn't really good looking, was it? Even the second generation was less controversial looking perhaps. It wasn't a good looking car. This, I think, is. None of that matters, however, if it doesn't drive well, if it doesn't deliver on range. And this slippery shape is actually for range. Now, Nissan can claim up to 604 kilometers. That's from the 75 kilowatt hour battery. There will be two different versions. I'll speak a bit more about that when I'm out on the road. But for now, drinking details, and then let's go out for a drive. Before I go anywhere in the Nissan Leaf, I should probably talk about its interior. I know Neil has gone into it in a lot more detail in our other video, in the static video, but I think it's worth also reiterating that this is completely new. This is a very new car. It's built on the same platform as the Nissan Ariya, and that gives you a hint at how the interior looks as well, the architecture. Same kind of idea, lots of space. In fact, the whole heating and ventilation and air conditioning system is under the bonnet, so there's no frunk, as the Americans call it. But what that does mean is frees up all this space here. So in front of the center console, there's actually nothing. It makes the whole car feel far more spacious up front. It's not massive in the back, it's bigger than the old Leaf, but it's still a C-Segment car, and don't forget that. And it's quite compact, do not forget that either. It feels a very high quality in here, and I think that's probably a key thing. It feels, like I mentioned, a step above the old Leaf in many ways. It's all digital, of course. You've got two 14.3-inch digital screens here in front of us. You can customize the look of them in every which way. And it's fully featured. It's got Google software built in, really nice tactile materials throughout. Basically, it wins the showroom battle. You get into this car in the showroom, you go, yep, I quite like this. I'd like to go out for a drive. Let's do that. So you've got these 4 buttons here to press to drive. Couldn't be simpler. Park, reverse, neutral, and drive. To the right of that, you've got D mode, which is just the driving modes. If I cycle through those, what will we see? We have an eco, standard, sport, and personal, so you can set it up as you want to customize it. And then there's an e-pedal mode, which is for one pedal driving. So if you're not used to electric cars, that is, it uses accelerator only, effectively. That regenerative braking, where when you slow down, it recharges the battery. That is what causes the car to slow down, and it's quite an intense feeling, actually. I'm not a huge fan of it, but that's each to their own. Behind the wheel itself, you can actually alter the level of brake energy regeneration. And again, I like it to have it at its lowest, but it is possibly a bit more efficient if you have it at a higher level, especially in stop-start traffic. That is, of course, if you're not preempting the traffic ahead. I personally prefer that, even if it is potentially less efficient. Before I go out, it's probably also worth pointing out that the test route we have today is a 5.5 kilometer track. It's not a race track, it's a testing track. And it's set up a bit like a road, but there are some high speed sections and some very tight chicanes. And it's a very smooth road, actually, smooth surface. So we won't be able to get much of a feel for how the suspension is in this car. We also won't really get much of a feel for the efficiency. I haven't got a lot of time in this car, but what I'm going to do first is just drive it quite slowly around for a couple of kilometers and see what the average kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers is. This is the higher spec model. It's 75 kilowatt hour. Let's get moving. So the car we're driving today is the highest spec powertrain you can buy. Or at the moment anyway. It's got a 75 kilowatt hour battery and a 217 horsepower electric motor. It drives the front wheel, so automatic, of course, like all electric cars. The official WLTP figure is as high as 604 kilometers, which is really impressive by any measure, and that equates to an average consumption figure of 14.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which, yeah, that's great. That's really good efficiency if you can get near that. What I really like, however, is that Nissan's engineers have gone out and done what they call a real highway test. So at 130 kilometers an hour, which is significantly higher than the Irish motorway limit, I should add, and at temperatures as low as 10 degrees C, they managed 330 kilometers to a charge. Now that's really telling. That's a really useful figure, actually, perhaps more so than the WLTP number. And on Irish roads, which are a bit slower, fair enough, it might be a bit colder than that, but that's a good average temperature. It sounds like people should get well in excess of 350 kilometers, which we'd like to see. We'll test that further when we drive the car at a later date on our Irish roads. In the meantime, on this test track now, I've just been ambling around talking to you, so I'm probably exceeding no more than 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour here, which is kind of useful test of real world ambling along. And since I've started talking, this car is averaging 12.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So it is capable of doing that. Bear in mind, I've got it in the eco mode, but the air conditioning is on, so I'm keeping cool in here. Now, I'm going to ramp it up a little bit to see what it actually drives like. So put it up in sport. It has, now don't forget, this has got fixed suspension, so there's nothing changes in suspension when you put it up to the sport mode. It just responds a little quicker, the steering's a little bit different, etc. What I like straight away is that the steering response is pretty good. Now again, as I mentioned, I've left the regeneration down to its lowest level because I don't really like it interfering with braking when I go into a corner. So with that turned off, it feels quite natural. The car's really well planted. This track doesn't have a lot of bumps, but it has some undulations, and the car feels very planted, very polished. It's quite quiet as well. Just adds to the sense of quality that I mentioned before. Now, in some of the higher speed sections here, it's got a lot of stability. You can turn it in, you can probably hear the tires beginning to protest there, but it's very stable. Now, nobody's going to be bringing a car like this to a test track, obviously, much less a race track. But what this track is showing us is that how stable it is and how easy it is to drive. Accelerate hard out of this hairpin, and there's a lot of traction, no problem. Now, the rougher sound you're hearing, that they've got a piece of Belgian pavé, I think they call it here, which is really rough road. But yes, you can hear it, but the car feels fine. It doesn't feel uncomfortable in here. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of vices, really. And sure, it's not going to be an exciting car to drive, but having driven the Micra, the new Nissan Micra around here recently as well, around the same piece of road, this isn't exactly shamed by that car. This, still feels stable. It still feels like it's capable of a bit of fun, of the driver enjoying themselves, which is quite nice. In summary then, as indicated by the new look, new design, new space and everything, the Leaf is considerably more interesting and more impressive than before. That shouldn't really be any surprise. You couldn't launch a new Leaf and it'd only be slightly better than the old one. We expect it to be reflected in the pricing, but having driven it now briefly here, you have to say that it feels like higher quality. It feels like a higher positioned car in the automotive landscape, shall we say. And it does what it says in the tin, I suppose. Obviously, we haven't had a chance to do a full-on range review or efficiency assessment, but it seems at least capable of those numbers at slower speeds, admittedly. And to be honest, I think a lot of people, like I said a minute ago about winning the showroom battle and getting in and thinking, oh yeah, I quite like this. They'll also just do a little amble around, drive around the local route near the dealership and think, yep, no vices, it's quite smooth, it's quite quiet, it's quite comfortable. I could see myself in this. I think that'll be enough for a lot of people, to be honest. It's an efficient EV, and yet it does everything else as well. It's it's just a car, you know, at the end of the day. And it may look a bit like a crossover, but I quite like how interesting looking it is. And it isn't a pure SUV either, is it? It's not a big bulky SUV. And I think it'll win people over. I think people will appreciate this. I think it'll do well. Well, that was our first taste of the new Nissan Leaf from behind the wheel. As you see, it's quite an interesting car. I think it's a massive step forward from what went before. It does continue the Leaf legacy for sure, but perhaps for a new set of buyers and I guess even more of the market, if you like. We look forward to spending more time with it later in the year. If you want to know more about the new Nissan Leaf, pop along to our website. It's CompleteCar.ie. It's a great resource for finding your next new car.